Coming up, controversial plans for a 4,000-space Muslim cemetery near Solihull and why residents aren't happy. Details next. Hello, welcome to ITV News Central. On the programme tonight, why the wish to rest in peace has led to strife in Solihull.
Bug bites, why the warm weather is creating perfect breeding conditions for insects.
A fight to the top spot to claim judo gold.
Look at all this beautiful writing.
And celebrating student success at the end of our week with Oak Tree Primary.
Good evening. A developing story to tell you about first tonight. Armed officers are currently attending a fatal shooting near Rugby in Warwickshire. Reports say at least 2 vehicles were involved, one of which left the road.
We know road closures are in place while the murder investigation begins. But Lee Connolly joins us now for the very latest. And Lee, the details are scarce at the moment, but what can you tell us?
Well, what we know at the moment, police have confirmed that they found a man with gunshot wounds in an abandoned vehicle and he was pronounced dead at the scene. Police were called to Newton Road in the village of Newton near Rugby at around 11:45 today. They said the incident involved at least 2 vehicles. One had left the road while another was seen driving towards Newton and the A5, and police are now looking for either a silver hatchback or a maroon or red metallic car. The road's been cordoned off ever since. There's several police vehicles there at the moment, including 2 forensic vans. Police have confirmed that they've made 2 arrests in connection with the incident and that inquiries are ongoing. And of course, we'll have all the latest on our website as and when we get it.
OK, Lee, thank you very much. There's a row brewing in Solihull over plans to build a 4,000-plot Muslim cemetery on farmland a few miles outside the town. The company behind the application says the cemetery is needed because the borough's Muslim population has more than doubled in the past decade.
But locals who oppose the plans point out that Solihull has a much lower Muslim population than other parts of the West Midlands, which means there is no justification for building on the Greenbelt land. Callum Watkinson has the details.
Buried, never cremated, Muslims in the Midlands are currently laid to rest in a dedicated section of an existing cemetery, like here in Handsworth. Now a company in Bedford wants to build a Muslim cemetery on this farmland near Solihull. Residents are opposed because this is Greenbelt land, and they say there aren't enough Muslims here to justify it.
There are about 2.5% Muslim community in Solihull, but a much greater number in the West Midlands as a whole. It's not for Solihull. We almost see it as a land grab by Birmingham and Coventry to impose a facility in this area, which is really not a suitable place.
Already rejected once, some local Muslims feel that recent events in Birmingham schools and the debates they sparked about Britishness may lead to these plans being turned down a second time, but for the wrong reasons.
We have to promote British values, so don't allow Muslim cemetery doesn't go with the British values. It's wrong. The council have to look into the application on its own merit, what the criteria A, B, C, D, and then if he comply with this, he should be allowed.
And the plans do not comply, the campaigners say, with the requirement that building on Greenbelt land should take place only in exceptional circumstances. Cemetery Development Services, the company behind the application, had no comment for us, but it's likely planning permission is a condition of their agreement to purchase this plot, one of a number up for sale on the same farm. This landowner is clearly determined to sell, the campaigners just as determined to stop this cemetery from being built. It will be a commercial concern run for profit, and those who oppose it say that most of the Muslims who will use it live outside this borough. Callum Watkinson, ITV News, Solihull.
And those plans are out for public consultation until the end of September, and they'll go before the Council's Planning Committee on the 4th of October.
Detectives investigating the murder of a woman whose body was found in a burnt-out car in Birmingham have appealed for witnesses over sightings of the distinctive car beforehand. Officers were called to reports of a car fire on Fenton Road in Erdington on Tuesday night. Damien Dinabewe, who is 34, has been charged with murder. Police want to speak to anyone who saw a pink Audi A3 convertible before it was found alight.
Birmingham Airport has begun an investigation after a passenger who's thought to have been drinking allegedly managed to breach security and board an empty plane. A 22-year-old man allegedly got onto the airfield and boarded a Lufthansa plane on July the 17th. Police say he was arrested and charged later that day with entering a security restricted area and a separate offence of boarding an aircraft without permission.
There's been a sharp rise in the number of Asian people offering to become bone marrow donors. The increase is being put down to a campaign started by a young woman from Birmingham who recently discovered she has a rare form of blood cancer.
She needs a stem cell transplant, but the country's leading bone marrow charity says although her efforts are encouraging, more potential donors are still needed. Andy Bevan has the full story.
This is what life is like for Ria Dandekar, a daily dose of drugs to combat her blood cancer. They keep it in check, but only just, and only for now. And this is what life used to be like for Ria, an active 21-year-old, an army cadet, a keen adventurer, and a regular in the lineup at the Race for Life. In March, she found a lump under her arm, which worried her. Her consultant confirmed her fears.
He said, "It's lymphoma." And my brain suddenly scrambled. I did A-level biology and it was all of a sudden lymphoma, lymphatic system, tissue fluid. Wait, is this cancer? And he said yes.
Ria needs a stem cell transplant harvested from a suitable bone marrow donor. Her best chance of a match would be an Asian donor, so she started an online campaign called Save Ria Now, and it seems her message is getting through. From the start of June to the middle of July this year, bone marrow charity Anthony Nolan received 161 applications from the Birmingham area compared to 35 in the same period last year. A third of this year's applications, 53, were from Asians compared to just 5 last year. That's an increase of more than 1,000%, but it needs to be even higher.
In terms of statistics-wise, for a white person to have a matching donor in England, it's 1 in 3. And for an Asian or black person or any other ethnic minority, it's 1 in 125,000.
We always need more people from ethnic minorities to join the register. There's simply a lack of awareness in a lot of cases. People don't realise that it's something that can happen in their community and that actually the answer is within the community as well.
The worldwide search of bone marrow databases is now underway. In the meantime, Ria can only hope that more potential donors from the Asian community come forward and that one of them can save her life. Andy Bevan, ITV News.
And you can find links to signing up for blood donation registers on our website. The details, as ever, at itv.com/central.
Meanwhile, the family of a toddler from Staffordshire who also needs a bone marrow transplant have released a clip of her asking for help.
Say just one more. Thank you.
Margot Martini had a transplant earlier this year, but the 2-year-old has since begun to relapse. Her family want to get more than 1 million people on the register by asking people already signed up to encourage someone else to do the same.
A man's escaped with minor injuries after his car left the road, hit a tree and narrowly missed a house. It happened on Armorial Road in Coventry just before 1 o'clock this morning. The car ended up on a driveway against a parked van and a house with its bonnet pointing in the air. The man, thought to be in his 30s, escaped out of a rear window.
Now, as temperatures continue to rise across the region, so have the number of people being bitten by insects. Experts say the weather we're experiencing at the moment is the perfect storm for insects like mosquitoes to breed.
Well, it's all down to the mix of heat and the damp conditions left with us from the recent thunderstorms and downpours. Emily Knight reports.
So this is where you tend to find a lot of biting insects because their larvae develop in wet mud or shallow water. And this is also where birds and amphibians will eat them. Let's see what we've got in here. Nothing at all. various flies and bugs. Nothing that bites though, you'll be pleased to hear.
Entomologist Stephen Falk demonstrates how insect surveys are carried out, a way of establishing which of these tiny creatures are gracing our wildlife areas at any one time. And it seems at the moment the extreme heat we've been experiencing, along with the thunderstorms, has provided perfect conditions for the likes of mosquitoes and other biting insects to thrive.
This is the time of year when the adults of biting insects tend to peak, and they include things like mosquitoes, black flies, biting midges if you're in Scotland, and then also horseflies. We haven't had any droughts, so most of them have larvae that like damp, either water or damp mud. So they haven't had the drought because drought knocks them out. We haven't had really cold weather because that can affect them. So really it's just, it's just the perfect sort of breeding conditions for them.
Experts are warning we could see an increase in the numbers of biting insects as the warm weather continues.
It does feel quite tropical at the moment, and last night I didn't sleep very well because it was so muggy, and that is perfect weather for mosquitoes to breed in and to fly and find us and bite us. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence this year that people seem to be getting bitten more. I get a lot of people contacting me and telling me that they're being bitten more this year than they have in previous years.
But despite the huge irritation to most of us that these insects cause, as more of us get bitten as we venture outdoors for the holiday season, these insects do have an important role to play.
Biting bugs that can be found in streams play a huge, important role in our ecosystem. They're a source of food for birds, bats and frogs, and without them we would simply see less of these creatures in our countryside.
As the insects continue to enjoy the hot and damp conditions, for us to do also and stay bite-free, the advice is to remove any water from around our homes, such as water butts, as that is where insects like mosquitoes want to lay their eggs.
Emily Knight reporting, and it seems like the weather's to blame, so we brought in our weather presenter Janelle.
To blame me, it's not my fault.
No, we're not going to blame you actually, Janelle, but you can empathise, can't you,
I've been bitten by a horsefly and I was actually on antibiotics, so they are actually quite dangerous, but as he said, stay away from stagnant water, and if you've got a pond or anything, stay away from that when it's really hot. But thankfully the tropical temperatures are going to be falling over the weekend.
Okay.
Which is good news for some of us, I guess, who don't like it too hot.
Well, we do like it.
Oh, yeah,
it's just
right.
you.
Yeah, okay, fine. Well, we'll get the full details in the forecast a little
Definitely.
later. Janelle, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't like it too hot. Some do, as the movie says. Now, the national and international news is coming up at 6:30 after us, of course. With the details now, here's Ranveer Singh.
The UK is officially out of its economic slump. Services like cafes and restaurants lead the charge as the country passes pre-crisis levels for the first time in 6 years. The Chancellor hails it as a massive milestone. 8 days after it crashed, investigators discover another section of MH17 in Ukraine. And the pioneering breast cancer treatment that has saved sufferers like Marcel from weeks of invasive radiotherapy. Join Alistair Stewart and me at 6:30.
But before all that, on ITV News Central, why flailing feet, I'm glad I got that right, meant judo gold for Nakoda Davis.